Welcome to the Careers in Finance webinar for students on the Masters in Law and Finance programme. I'm Claire, the Events, Careers and Alumni Officer for the MLF programme. I work closely with the careers advisors at both the Saïd Business School and the University's Careers Service to provide support as you transition to the next stage in your careers. I'd like to introduce John Madrick, one of the excellent team of careers advisors at the Careers Service at the Saïd Business School. John spent 15 years in front office banking before moving into financial services recruitment, both agency and in-house, where he recruited for top-tier investment banks and asset managers. In the 2 years prior to joining Oxford Saïd, he spent time as the interim head of recruitment at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and also undertook a professional qualification in career management. John will give an overview of the finance industry and explain where MLFs typically fit. He will expand on recruitment timelines and the application process, as well as giving you advice on what to do to prepare, including tips on how to fine-tune your CV. After John has finished, there will be time for you to ask some questions. John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire, and welcome everybody to the MLF Finance Careers webinar. As Claire pointed out, I'm one of the careers advisors at the business school, the Saïd Business School. But I should also point out right at the top of the webinar that you are in a very envious and lucky position in that you are able to access all the support and guidance that the careers team here at the business school can give you, but you also have access to my colleagues in the wider Oxford Careers Service, which is based on the Banbury Road. And wherever possible, I will try and make some reference to their offering as well. So do remember, on arrival in Oxford in October, you have the support of two different careers teams, all adequately tooled up with professional qualifications and industry experience. So you're in a very good position. Okay, so today we will take you through the following elements. It will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour in terms of the finance industry. I'll have a quick overview. Then we'll have a look at where typically do MLF students fit within that world. We'll look at some recruitment timelines, some things to start thinking about now, the resources available to you, and finally we will touch upon, but in minute form I guess, the application process and some quick CV tips. Okay, so let's start with stating the obvious in that finance is much more than banking. Many of the students here, both the Masters of Finance and Economics students, the MBA students, and indeed the Masters of Law and Finance students, do target banking, and particularly investment banking, and that's what they tend to think of mainly in terms of financial services. But I want to bring your attention to a whole host of other opportunities that are available to MLF students. And we have examples both this year and in previous years of MLF students going into different areas of financial services industry. So we have clearly investment banking, both from the pure investment banking, corporate finance, M&A side, and also the markets securities side, the trading, sales, research element of investment banking. We have the broader custodial banking, commercial banking as well. We also have a lot of students interested in the buy side, and we include in the buy side obviously the classic long only asset management, investment management arena, but also private equity, venture capital, hedge fund management, etc. You've got the public sector, including the stock exchanges and the regulators. You've got the development banks, people like the IFC, the World Bank, EBRD. I think a couple of the MLF students from this year are going to be interning with the EIB this summer, for example. And then the sovereign wealth funds, rating agencies, and of course the the finance divisions of the corporate world as well. So many different things to be able to think about. So within that broad financial services landscape, where do Master of Laws and Finance students typically fit? Well, many of you will, as I say, target the M&A departments of the investment banks, particularly those maybe who've been currently sitting on the other side of the table and looking at the legal aspects of some of those transactions. Many of you will fit neatly into the distressed debt and restructuring arenas of both the banks and indeed the private equity firms. Leveraged finance is another area where legal minds are often valued, as is private equity generally, and of course maybe slightly more classically the compliance and regulatory arenas of financial services. And what is it that employers are interested in from students with a law background as opposed to any previous sort of hands-on experience in finance? Well, these are some of them, and you may want to think about how you weave some of these into your applications, CVs and cover letters. So they value your ability to be attentive to detail, your analysis skills if nothing else. Being able to construct clear arguments and be persuasive, clearly a very, very valuable tool in most walks of life, but particularly within the finance world. Your negotiation skills will be highly valued. Analytical skills I've already touched on, and your ability to problem solve. And those problem solving skills particularly pertinent to any of you who may look at the strategy consultancy, management consultancy arena. And finally, your ability to have empathy and demonstrate tact, the sorts of soft skills that are going to be very applicable to you being able to deal with senior stakeholders in the businesses that you end up joining. Let's have a quick look at how the industry hires. For most of you, I would imagine you will fit probably into the analyst or associate entry programs. The bulge bracket are very used to running big programs in terms of entry-level schemes, and they will begin early. Many recruit have a pretty aggressive recruiting timeline, so you need to start thinking about applications and prep for applications right from the word go, and well before you arrive in Oxford, because many of these programs will open up in August, September, and be closing also September, October, November. So there's not a lot of time for you to get involved in these should you think you are prepared and ready enough to apply. The other thing to note here is that many banks in particular, they hire on what they call a rolling basis, which in essence is a first come, first served. So if they see a really good candidate early, they will offer that candidate and thus reduce the seat count for later applicants. So if you feel you're ready enough and able to apply, then it's very advisable to do that early, and inadvisable to leave that until the 11th hour, because you may be the best prepared student in the world, but you may well find that all the seats have gone. And that sort of bank bulge bracket timeline, hiring timeline is not dissimilar to the management consultancy world as well. The smaller boutiques, private equity firms, venture capital firms and hedge funds are a little bit more attuned to immediate business needs, and so are more opportunistic in their hiring, and their programs, if they have a program at all, probably start a little bit later, sort of December, January. I've just noticed, and apologies that some of these dates here from last year, please read 17 and 18 where you're seeing 16 and 17. But also the investment banking boutiques, people like Greenhill, Rothschilds, Evercore, etc., they will also run programs, and they'll run more along the bulge bracket lines. It's just the smaller firms that are a bit more opportunistic. And for those MLF students that have a little bit more work experience behind them and don't neatly fit into an entry-level analyst or associate program at these firms, then you'll want to look at the lateral hiring, which are going to be advertised via job boards in the open market, maybe via executive recruitment firms. And those will be ongoing throughout the year, but on an ad hoc basis. And maybe just one last point about the hiring timeline is that since Brexit we have noticed a huge increase in banks wanting to hire via the internship route rather than the full-time route. So for those of you who do not have previous specific finance-related experience, you should think seriously about going down the internship route, summer internship route first, because the banks will convert. It'll vary as to how many they convert, but they do convert, and they turn first to their internship pool. So there may be a stepping stone approach that you need to take, but that would be my strong advice. We've had examples this year of one or two students who didn't take that on board, and who had applied for full-time roles early on, and surprise, surprise, did not get anywhere, and the horse had already bolted to a certain extent, and that you couldn't turn the clock back and reapply. So think carefully, take advice from myself, my colleague Ben Leslie, or indeed my colleagues at the Oxford Careers Service about that. Okay, so I'll look at maybe some of the preparation you can start thinking about and doing ahead of arrival in Oxford. First of all, think about the sort of lifestyle, work-life balance that you want from your future career. It's about being self-aware in many ways, and it's the hardest thing for people to get right. So it is worth spending time maybe doing some psychometric testing, maybe exploring your likes and dislikes a little bit more, so that you have a clear idea on arrival in Oxford when you want to properly press the go button on your career search, that you're pretty comfortable where you fit, what you like, what you dislike, etc. So think about the work environment, whether you want to work in a large firm, a boutique firm, a regional firm, an international firm. Think about, particularly those going into banking, think about the products you want to work with. Are you really interested in the equity market? Are you more interested in the macroeconomic environment of, for example, the interest rate or bond markets? You have a burning desire to be involved in the commodities market? So think about the underlying asset class that you may be working with, because your interest in that product will be important to your success in your future career, but it will also be very apparent when you start interviewing. If you can persuade any of the people you interview with that you have a deep interest in what they are doing and the products they are operating with, then that'll go a long way to being successful at interview. Are you a sort of client-facing person? We all, to a certain extent, have clients, but some of them internal, some of them external. But is that something that that aspect of work something you enjoy? Because that too will help guide you about some of the different roles available to you. Think about the cultural, geographic preferences. Be a bit pragmatic about those choices. There are clearly going to be jurisdictions where you will find it easier to find work, particularly if there are visas involved, than otherwise. So, do douse your undoubted ambition with a little bit of practicality. Think about the daily routine. You may be in a job that requires a lot of travelling. Check that out if it's not something that actually you're interested in. Long lead time, instant gratification I've got down there. That comes really, it's associated with the products and type of work you do. In the private equity world, for example, you could be working on many transactions, and the fruition of your work might not come properly home to roost for 5, 10 years, 15 years down the line. Whereas on the other hand, you may be working on a trading desk where you get pretty much instant gratification or otherwise of your work through profit and loss. And I'd encourage all of you to take a step back when you're involved in your career search and try and think medium to long term. I meet many students who are actually pretty good at interviewing and work hard at getting good at interviewing, and sort of think that's the end game, and that they land a job and they can boast to their fellow MLF students that they've landed a job, but without actually giving it deep thought as to whether it's something they're properly going to enjoy long term. So do think properly about it. And lastly, just for those who are thinking particularly about investment banking, there's a very good careers quiz on the Goldman Sachs careers website. They give various examples of their divisions, for example, at Goldman Sachs, including legal as well as other areas, and then you can do a quiz to see where maybe some of your skills best fit. So that's a good example of starting to work now to just help build your self-awareness up. So some things to consider as maybe a bit of a recap. Focus. If you are interviewing, and it even comes through in CVs and cover letters, a lack of focus will disqualify you as a serious candidate. Get a focus, have a focus once you're here, mine more deeply once you arrive in terms of your research, etc., because the more deeply you mine and research, the better you will come over as being a knowledgeable and therefore interested candidate. And indeed, on application, they often require departmental selection, so I would hope that a lot of you will have done a lot of pre-thinking ahead of arrival. And back to suitability, think about what suits you, what interests you, what excites you, because if you get those right, you'll get your career right. And research. We say it every year, and we can say it until we're blue in the face, but you will have an absolutely jam-packed programme on the MLF course, as indeed students on the MFE and MBA course do. It's a one-year programme, it's full on, there is so much to do, so much to take in, so much to enjoy. It's going to leave you precious little time for classic research around career. So the more you can do between now and on October, the better you'll be placed. Okay, so a quick look at some next steps. We've already talked a little bit about preparation, but we'll also look at the resources available to you, and at the end we'll have an absolute whistle-stop tour through application process and CV tips. Lots more we can we can say on those fronts, but we will just touch upon it now. If you've not got the message already, there it is. Begin the process now. Focus on some of the unique things to you. Is it a language? Is it some sort of industry sector background and experience that you can leverage? Think about things that you can push. And as my previous boss said to me, become a finance ninja if finance is the thing you're interested in. There is no excuse really for being behind the curve, either technically or from an information point of view. There's lots of support once you're here, but there's lots of things you can do ahead of time. You should have access, for those of you serious about finance, to the Wall Street prep modules. If you don't, then please email, we can sort that out, which will help you on your road to becoming more technically proficient. But you can start reading. It's actually listed there a little bit further down. Read the FT, read the Economist, become immersed in the world. A, because I think you'll find it actually sparks your interest, and B, because, and maybe more pertinently, when you do get to application and later to interview, that depth of understanding, that breadth of understanding will help you stand out. And believe you me, as an experienced recruiter, I can tell almost immediately the people who've picked up the FT 1 week before their first interview. And in red there, the most important message of all, certainly between now and your arrival, but will continue on arrival, is network. You have lots of your own networks. Obviously, currently you're going to develop great new networks, and now you're in a bit of a sweet spot at the moment. You're in an unthreatening, not banging on the door for a job type of situation. So you can network away quite comfortably, connecting with maybe alumni of the university, alumni of the course, alumni of the school, your own network, trying to get conversations, asking for advice and guidance so that you can build up a bank of information which will help you decide what you want to do, and later on be great in terms of underscoring your motivation and interest in some of the things you're going for. And complete focus and persistence from now and right through the course. It needs to can't be done half-heartedly. It's fine if you don't feel you're ready. It's fine if you delay the process until you finish the course, because career is not a race. It's much more important to get right. But if you are feeling as if you want to be applying and are ready to apply, then please give it some focus. And we've talked about building a knowledge base really by talking to everybody you possibly can. And if there's some soft skills that you feel you want to develop, what I've called there the likability factor, which are so important, and ultimately the factors that will get you the job rather than the person sitting next to you with the same sort of technical and academic skills. Then maybe think about those, identify those, and work out how you can help develop those between now and arrival. And then during the MLF, as I say, the network and resources, both from the business school perspective, the colleges you'll be attached to, and indeed the wider, my colleagues at the wider University Oxford Careers Service can provide, are there to help you. There are various events that OCS, Oxford Careers Service, put on. You may want to make a note of some of those now. There's a finance fair, for example, on October the 17th. There's a management consultancy fair on October the 18th. I think the law fair is November the 4th, and they'll be putting on other events, workshops, employer visits, as we do here at the business school, throughout Michaelmas term. So you will have access to what our careers portal, which is called Careers at Said. You'll also have access to Careers Connect, which is used by the wider university. I'm sure we can talk to you in more detail about that nearer the time, but you need to keep on top of those, particularly the events, because many employers will be visiting throughout the year, particularly in the first term, and there'll be many workshops and skill programs that you'll be able to join. For those of you absolutely intent on certain aspects of finance, particularly mergers and acquisitions, so the pure side of investment banking, corporate finance, leverage finance, equity, debt, capital market, leverage finance, you may want to try and join the Oxford Said Finance Lab. I would rather hope that if you were doing that, you would probably already attended the Finance Lab specific webinars, which were held a couple of weeks or so ago. If you didn't attend those and this is all new to you, then you need to look at the Finance Lab, Oxford Said Finance Lab website, and I can take some questions about it later, but I don't want to get bogged down in the Finance Lab. So happy to take Finance Lab questions offline after the webinar. Get involved with competitions, get involved with conferences, events, anything that you can do, because these will be again great material for you to talk about at interview, to talk about in your cover letters, again underscoring and demonstrating your interest in that firm, your interest in that business. Network, again, big and bold in red. Won't dwell on that so quickly now. And remain focused, as I say, as a reminder. No problem changing your mind halfway through. Many do. But if you're on a career path that you feel you're ready to go, give it your all. And remember to put into your planning the possibility of doing an internship rather than a full-time role straight away. And in terms of the resources available to you, as I say, CV, cover letter help, plenty of that from me and Ben at the business school, just as much help from the Oxford Career Service. The Oxford Career Service also has some great tools on its website, so do use those, some great tips for you there. And that's something you can easily start doing ahead of arrival, and then just hone on arrival. There'll be various skills and training workshops throughout Michaelmas being put on by both sets of careers teams. The ones at the business school will cover things like overviews, they'll cover things like interview prep for finance, they'll cover private equity, introduction to private equity, introduction to commercial banking, all sorts of different things. But again, you'll have access to those on both career portals. So make a plan on arrival of what things you want to attend, which workshops you want to join. There'll be the financial modelling and labs that are specific to those of you joining the finance lab, but much of that prep you can get started via Wall Street Prep. And we have industry advisors here as well at the business school. And just a quick word on those. They are a group of approximately 30 people who are not employees of the university but work very closely with the university. They're usually running their own consultancies by and large. But they all have deep industry expertise. So they've all worked in the industry they profess to be experts on, and indeed are experts on, and they work very closely with us and are particularly useful when it comes to mock interviews and technical interviews. For example, I work with one lady in my group of industry advisors who's 25, 30 years, a lot of which were managing director at JP Morgan on the investment banking side, and she can take students through technical M&A, typical M&A interviews. I've got somebody else that's been head of research at Lehman Brothers, somebody else who's currently running their own private equity firm. So a whole bank of expertise for you to leverage. Just moving along the circle, do get involved in the Oxford Business Networks, the OBNs, which will be finance related. There's a finance society as well at the wider university. Again, great, you'll have a good ability there to learn in a sort of group setting. They're student led, but they do bring employers in as well, and the great platform for you to practice interviewing, that type of thing, and get attached to the various social media that is relevant to what you do. There's certainly here at the business school we have a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, etc. So do connect with us. For any of you that feel you are ready, what does ready look like? Well, ideally, when you get there, those are the sort of stepping stones you'd have taken. You will have thought about yourself, thought about your strengths, weaknesses, likes, dislikes, what you want from a career. You'll have talked to lots of people and understood a little bit more about the firms you want to target and made a target list. Once that target list is up, you'll have mined a little bit more deeply and found out who the alumni are that are working there, which people in your network might know people who are working there, and start talking to those people. Your own personal story will be a lot clearer in terms of what you've done and what you've learned and what you, more importantly, bring and can add. Your CV and cover letter will have been worked over several times by hopefully several people, so that you're entirely comfortable with it, entirely comfortable sending it off, and more importantly, entirely comfortable talking about it. And you'll be pretty technically upbeat, or as much as you can be in terms of technical valuation, market fit, and the knowledge around the industry. And you'll have had some level of interview prep and understanding of what to expect at interview. Okay, how are we doing for time here? Not too bad. I'll just run through the last couple of slides. Quick look at the application process. Online applications are sometimes in the form of employers' own questions. I'm thinking HSBC, JP Morgan, they like to give you a series of their own questions for you to answer. Other times it may well be that you just have to send a CV and a cover letter. You should be expecting some online testing, verbal and non-verbal reasoning tests. Again, it's something you can practice ahead of getting here at Oxford. One of the firms that is very commonly used in the finance industry, the banking industry in particular, is SHL, and I know you can download and practice some of those for free. And I think the Oxford Careers Service has probably some practice tools available for you as well. So if you're feeling at all nervous about that sort of verbal, non-verbal reasoning testing, great thing to practice between now and arrival, and you can just hone when applicable once here. You do expect a phone or increasingly video interviews. Again, some good resources on that at Banbury Road from Banbury Road Careers team. We can also help you with that. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BlackRock, they're always all using a video interviewing system called HireView. And again, we have specific students that have gone through that process, so we can help you with that. And you should expect increasingly assessment centres as part of the interview process too. And assessment centres are effectively days or half days where you'd be in a group environment doing group exercises that might include, and usually does include, a presentation and analysis of some particular case. It will also involve one-to-one interviews and even maybe some further psychometric testing, maybe just to make sure that the verbal and non-verbal tests that you did earlier on in your application were genuine. And then, of course, you'll move on, all of you, to the offer stage. And I think finally, some last-minute CV tips. So we can talk a lot more about this, and there's a lot more you can pick up online, but very briefly, 1 page, please, unless, of course, you've been working 30 years, in which case you may want to go to 2 pages, or you have a huge amount of published documentation and information that is out there that you want to list, but otherwise 1 page. Make it simple, no photos, no date of birth, no multicoloured CVs, simple black and white, simple format, simple font, and no jargon. Most importantly, I think, where you can quantify your impact. So we don't want to read a whole list of duties and responsibilities. We want to know what you actually added and brought to the particular work experience you've had. That's the most important thing, and where you can quantify that impact. So if you've raised sales by 20% or cut defaults by 30%, give it a number. Try and give the reader the impression that actually this is somebody that could really add some benefit to my company. And align with the job description and the competencies that are maybe listed in the job description. Don't bang on about leadership if leadership is not one of the qualities required for that particular role. So align the CV and particularly the cover to the particular role that you're going for. And do include interests and hobbies. Very often they can be an icebreaker between you and an interviewer, but be careful about them. Again, try and give them some impact. Try and make sure that if you've done some climbing, that it's a little bit more than just a weekend exercise, and try and make yourself stand out. Don't just put down I like reading or red wine drinking or whatever it might be. Give it some impact. Okay, I think I mentioned at the top that it would be a whistle-stop tour, and it has been. There is some final page of further reading for you. I won't go through those, and I'll open it up now to questions and answers.
So if you've got any questions, type them in the Q&A box, and we will endeavour to answer them for you. Can we get our CV assessed by the careers team at Oxford? The answer to that is pretty much yes.
Absolutely. I think both teams will help you with that. Certainly, if you wish to email me, feel free to do so, and either myself or my colleague Ben will help you with that. The earlier, the more prep you can do before you arrive, the better placed you'll be once you arrive, and the more you'll get out of your Oxford experience generally, never mind your career search. So happy to help.
There is a CV template, isn't there?
There is a CV template which you should have access to on Careers at Said, and it already has some good tips there, and I'm in discussion to be able to give you access to another portal which is called VMOC, which will help that too. But certainly, yeah, if you've got a CV you want to send over, do look at the Careers at Said first of all for the format, and try and put it into the business school format first. But thereafter, happy to advise.
Okay, what's the difference between an analyst and an associate position?
Okay, apologies. Yeah, so an analyst is typically the first rank in a bank. So that will consist usually of undergraduates who just graduated, if you see what I mean. So it's their first entry position into the business, and also will include, in many cases, sort of young master's students, so pre-experienced master's students. So, for example, our Masters of Financial Economics students here at the business school are what we call pre-experienced masters. They've done their undergrad degree, they may have some internship experience, but they've then gone straight into a master's. They too will be included in that analyst position. And normally you'd have 3 years as an analyst 1, analyst 2, analyst 3, and then the next rung of the corporate ladder in banking terms is associate, and that's where the MBAs kick in. So if you've had already maybe 3-4 years experience, you may find that the associate positions are more pertinent and relevant to you. Otherwise it's likely to be the analyst positions.
So the next question is it possible to start a graduate position at an investment bank immediately after completing a summer internship, and how do off-cycle internships work?
Okay, it is possible. A little bit depends on your visa status. So some firms will convert straight away. Others will make you wait. So there are some firms out there that like to take what they call penultimate year students at analyst level. I.e. they're expecting you to work for them for 6 to 10 weeks over the summer, then return to your final year of study, and then if you're offered, they would then take you on full time in the following spring or summer. There are others who would take you potentially straight away, and aren't worried about the penultimate year qualification at all. So the first part of that was, are there firms that do immediately take on after completing? So the answer to that is yes, but not always. And additionally, how do off-cycle internships work? Well, off-cycle internships work on a business needs basis. If, for example, one particular desk at a bank gets a new influx of business and they haven't got enough hands, particularly junior hands, to cope with that work, they will offer off-cycle internships. And there is some evidence that there are more of those in the market at the moment because of Brexit. So I think it's fair to say that many firms have been slightly shy of taking on full-time staff, and so have managed that by taking on slightly more interns, and also offering slightly more off-cycle internships. So it's the case that even if you don't get in first time round, in the current environment you may well find that other opportunities pop up outside the normal hiring calendar.
Somebody asked how long typically internships last.
Well, again, they vary, but typically at the bulge brackets we're talking 6 to 10 weeks, let's say. So that's what you should expect.
And then we've got 2 people who asked the same question about whether a lawyer with several years of experience in a legal setting can they apply for an associate position at an investment bank?
Yes, they can. I'm not suggesting it's an easy shift. If you've got several years of experience in the legal field, you're often tagged with the legal label. It's hard sometimes to shake off. But if, for example, you have been sitting on the other side of a desk to to the banks on let's say IPOs or M&A transactions, and have a proper and thorough understanding of how the transactions work, and you work hard and you network with the right people, there's no reason why you can't slot into an associate position.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. Is there one more? Oh, okay, sorry. Here we go. Advice about cover letters. I think again, there's plenty of advice at Careers at Said and on the university's Careers Connect.
There is indeed. If you can't find it, email and I can direct you. But should all be on online.
Another one there. No, I think that's all the questions. I think things will become clearer as you go along. We will be sharing this. Another question. Is it true that MLF graduates are highly valued among banks and other financial institutions?
How do I answer that, Claire?
It depends on the person, I guess.
It's pretty clear from the time I've been here that MLF students are highly regarded. Whether that means you'll get the job or not, it depends on the competition out there, and the competition is stiff. So you do need to work at it, and so there's so many ingredients that go into landing a job. But if you follow some of the tips that we've been talking about today, hopefully that should stand you in good stead.
So John will be back when you're actually in Oxford. We will have a careers day as part of your induction, your 2-week induction programme, and John will be back again, so you can actually talk to him face to face about your route into careers in finance, and again other careers advisors from the Said Business School and from the wider university's career service will be there as well, so you can ask questions then. We will be sharing this on YouTube, so thank you very much for taking part, and we look forward to welcoming you at the beginning of Michaelmas term. Bye bye.
Bye bye.